This week on the Pro Wrestling Podcast, Stone Cold Steve Austin makes it official that he is returning to the ring at WrestleMania 38. CM Punk shoots on the WWE Network and Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor. Braun Breaker is a shitty fucking interview, is what he is. And the age-old question, Bret or Shawn? I'm your host, Seth Grimes, and this is the Pro Wrestling Podcast. It appears to be official. Stone Cold Steve Austin is coming back for one last match at this year's WrestleMania. Or is he? Check out this clip.
19 years ago, I wrestled my last match in a WWE ring. After 3 rock bottoms, 1, 2, 3, I lost the match. And for 19 years, I've had to live with that defeat, knowing my time was up. Kevin Owens, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for waking something up deep inside me that I've kept buried for 19 years. Ever since you started running that damn mealy mouth of yours talking about the state of Texas, the great state of Texas, you got my attention. And why would you want to do that, Kevin? I can think of 2 reasons. 1, you are one dumb son of a bitch. And 2, you are fixing to get your ass kicked by Stone Cold Steve Austin. Whether you want to call this a KO show, a match, a fight, a brawl, whatever, I will guarantee you this. In Dallas, Texas, where I started my career at WrestleMania, Stone Cold Steve Austin is going to open up one last can of whoop ass on you, Kevin Owens. And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
It would appear to be the case that Stone Cold has officially agreed to something at WrestleMania, but what exactly is it that we're getting? And why now? Right? Because Steve made it very clear in that little clip that we just heard that he was mentioning, like, you know, you could call it the KO show, you could call it a fight, you could call it a match, you could call it a confrontation, whatever you want to call it, but I'll be there. So for him to, I mean, he did say you could call it a match. And if he's calling it a match, then is he going to come back and after all this time get in the ring and actually get physical with Kevin Owens, like in the black trunks and the knee braces and all that shit? It will be interesting to see. But because he mentioned all those other things, that leads you to wonder, have they not quite figured out exactly what it's going to look like yet? Would it be more of maybe the kind of thing like when The Rock came back and beat up Eric Rowan and pinned him 1, 2, 3, where it was just basically a quick, you know, maybe there's a confrontation in the ring and then there's a stunner, you know, like the bell rings, stunner, 1, 2, 3, and we're done. We could also end up seeing something like a cinematic match where it doesn't even take place in the ring. I would imagine if they're advertising Stone Cold for a confrontation at WrestleMania, it's going to be in the ring in Texas. They're not going to do it on the screen. So I think cinematic can be ruled out, but it's certainly a possibility. It could just be a street fight. Maybe Stone Cold's out there with the jean shorts and the fucking Austin 316 t-shirt and fucking... He's just out there just whipping Owens around ringside, slamming him into the rails and stuff like that. Like, Stone Cold's arsenal was pretty limited as it was when back in the day after the Owen Hart incident where he, had that issue with his neck. So it's not like he's going to get out there and he's just not going to be able to do, as long as he's got the cardio and he's still in physical shape, and he's appeared with his shirt off and shit before, like on his TV, his Broken Skull TV show that he had. I want to say The Sessions, but that's not it. That's the network show, but you get what I'm saying. So he's in good physical condition, but if he's got cardio, you don't want him to get all blown up fucking 2 minutes into the match either, if it's going to go longer than that. But he doesn't, we're not going to be like, well, he can't fucking do the cross body blocks and the fucking monkey flips and the dives and the suplexes and all that shit. Like, Stone Cold's going to go out there and he's going to throw fists and he's going to throw feet, boots to faces, boots to asses, and that's what it's going to be. That's what it's always been since the Owen Hart thing. Steve was actually a very technical wrestler when he was stunning Steve. Like, he could work a little bit, I wouldn't say he wasn't like AJ Styles or anything like that, but his style was definitely more technical prior to him getting his neck broken, for sure. But it'll be interesting to see. Like, and then the other thing is, why Kevin Owens? And why after all this time? Remember when the video game was coming out that had CM Punk on the cover and Austin was going to be a character, like a DLC or some shit? And him and Jim Ross had this sit down, like Punk, Austin, Jim Ross in the middle. And they had this confrontation where they were like acting like, if we were to, to promote the video game, theoretically, you could have Stone Cold versus CM Punk. And they're asking these two guys, so what would happen if in real life you guys had the opportunity? And they cut promos on each other, and it was fucking beautiful. And it had the whole internet at that time saying, dude, we need this Stone Cold versus CM Punk match. How fucking amazing would that be? It would be fucking amazing. So why didn't it happen then? Why didn't he come back and face John Cena? Why didn't, to me, those are probably the top two. I don't know that there's like a must-have one last match that I need to see. I know both Brock and Stone Cold had kind of mentioned that they wanted to work with each other in different interviews. So I know that would be one for their bucket list, not mine necessarily. And I don't know that Steve ever could have came back and actually had a match with Brock, like Brock likes to have matches. But, I know that Kevin Owens, there's probably a handful of guys on the roster. There's several that he could feel safe working with. Sammy comes to mind, another safe one. Lots of safe guys. AJ would take good care of him. Lots of guys would take good care of him. Randy. But him and Owens, they are kind of similar versions of each other. Owens is that, he's not the beer-swilling redneck, but he's the brawler, and he's the t-shirt wearing guy, and he's just out there to just kick somebody's ass. So, and of course the stunner for obvious reasons. So of the people on the roster, Owens is a great choice, but why now? And why that feud? If you're going to come back after 19 years, is that what it was? Almost 20 years out of the ring, and you're going to get in the ring with Kevin Owens? Okay, I know that sounds bad because people love Kevin Owens. I love Kevin Owens. I respect him. I always have since the Kevin Steen days in Ring of Honor. But, it doesn't scream box office. The attraction is Stone Cold's coming back. It's not Owens versus Austin. Must see. You know what I mean? That was Austin versus Punk. That's what that was. Or Austin versus Cena. You sell out fucking any stadium on the planet with those matches. especially Cena versus Austin, in my opinion. Just the marquee value of it. But Kevin Owens, like, why? Like, they must be throwing like fucking many money bags, blimps, all that shit to Stone Cold at this point, right? Like, how much? Just here's a blank check, write whatever you need on it to get back in the fucking ring. I don't care what it is. And why didn't they do that before? Are we that deep into the, in case of emergency, break glass? I mean, we almost got Vince coming back, and he may still come back. He may be involved physically in this Austin Theory gimmick or whatever, or add himself in to be part of the attraction, because they're just throwing shit at the wall now to get people, like, and somehow every year, because Vince is a brilliant promoter, they are able to come up with whatever they need to make WrestleMania special. But at some point, that well's going to run dry. I mean, how deep are we now that Stone Cold Steve Austin is here? And we don't know everything. For all we know, Stone Cold could be going through some financial troubles. He hasn't been doing his podcast lately, and I don't know why. He had one of the biggest podcasts in the whole fucking country, so on the planet. So, I mean, he's leaving money on the table there, but, I mean, maybe there's health issues with somebody in the family. Maybe, who knows? I mean, that's not fair to speculate on shit like that, but what is the reason now? And I don't think Kevin Owens is a big enough, like, well, that's just a match I can't pass up. That was a horrible impression, but it's a match you can pass up. You know, like, if I couldn't convince you, hey, you want to work with Punk? Hey, you want to work with Brock? Hey, you want to work with fucking Cena? Hey, you want to work with anybody else? And he just wasn't going to do it ever. I mean, I think Punk was probably the closest we might have got to a Stone Cold return. We were salivating for it at that time. I know I was. Here's the guy that was my favorite in the Attitude Era. As a little kid, his posters on my wall. Right? Now, when I look back in history, I don't necessarily think of Stone Cold as one of my all-time faves anymore. But, I mean, respect the fuck out of the guy, right? And loved him as a kid. So, just, like, why, after all this time, would you just want to come back for Kevin Owens? There's got to be something there. It's got to be the blank check from WWE. God, we need you. Well, fucking, I'll take your pants off and suck your dick. I'll do whatever you need me to do. Blank check plus dick job. Here you go. I mean, in of course, that's John Laurinaitis given the anyway. So, whatever it is, it will be interesting to see. I have faith that Stone Cold will be able to be Stone Cold. I don't think he'll embarrass himself because he never really did anything special. It was all charisma. He was all personality, and he hasn't lost any of that. As long as he can punch, he can kick, he can swear, talk trash, throw people, and flip middle fingers and stuff, he's going to be just fine. So, it'll be interesting to see. WrestleMania, here we come, baby. After the amazing Revolution pay-per-view, including the brutal dog collar match between CM Punk and MJF, they had the Revolution post-fight, post-show press conference scrum, and CM Punk took the panel, and he ended up getting emotional when he was asked what his thoughts were on Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor. Check out what Punk had to say.
What was your reaction when you found out Tony was buying ROH? Because that had to be a pretty special moment.
It was pretty important, you know? I loved ROH so much, you know? And I can't
explain how happy I am that like my footage, it's in good hands. You know, it's just good to know that it's in the hands of somebody who treat it well. I literally feel like my baby is in somebody's hands that I know will raise the child the right way and do good things with it. And you know, it won't get made into just some tab on a shitty, confusing app that's hard to navigate. And the boys don't get paid anything off it, you know what I mean? So it's just, like I said, I was relieved, you know, because obviously let's talk facts. It was either Tony was gonna buy it or Vince was gonna buy it. And I don't want Vince to own any of my footage. He owns enough of it. You know, he owns enough of it that I don't get paid off of. People need to understand that when I left, I was asking questions about the network, which had not been launched yet. I was saying, how am I gonna get paid off this? We don't even understand what the pay scale is. I don't know if I get paid off a gate for a pay-per-view, off a buy rate for a pay-per-view. You guys already just throw darts at an imaginary board and you pay me whatever you want. I still get royalties. That's the only hard copy thing I see is DVD sales. So once all the DVDs go away and you're just putting stuff up on the network, I'm not getting paid. Or am I? Tell me, let's talk about it. Oh, my guy, you're good. Oh, yeah, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. They couldn't tell me. And now I've watched my royalty checks, which I still get, dwindle to nothing because they just put everything on the network. And the boys don't get paid. That's not just me, that's everybody. That's criminal.
Yeah, he got a little teared up there. He's very emotional about it. It's very clear because Punk, in every interview, any chance he ever gets, he talks negatively about the WWE. So it's very clear that I don't think he's being a hater as much as I think he was very, very emotionally hurt by WWE. It's like the girl that he was dating or married to and ended up cheating on him or something, and he's so damaged by it that he just carries that with him. It's like Bret Hart did. He loved wrestling. He loved his career, and he carried that damage of the Montreal Screwjob around with him for years and years and years. Probably still does. I think CM Punk, he said in this interview here that he loves professional wrestling, and he had it taken away from him for 7 years. Now, granted, that was self-exiled, right? Like, he took it away from himself, you could argue. He's a quitter, like MJF said. But in his mind, like, obviously you can tell he felt like he had no other choice. He was pushed out of the business. He didn't love it there. He started to hate what he loved his whole life. He felt screwed. He felt betrayed. He felt unappreciated, unrespected. All of those things he has kept bottled up. And yeah, he lets them out. In every interview that he ever does, he's got something negative to say about WWE. It was just, even if it's just a little passing comment, you know. But it's hard to find him talking without mentioning WWE. But like I said, I don't think that's him being a hater or just taking shots. I really think, and it came out here. He's hurt. He's betrayed. He feels it in his bones. Like, that hurts his heart, what happened with him in WWE. It was a hard breakup. And for him, knowing now that his wrestling legacy that he leaves behind in his Ring of Honor career, which he's also on record of saying that he loved that time of his career, that he had a lot of fun back then, that he didn't want to leave Ring of Honor. He just knew it was time. And to know that that's not just going to end up over at the WWE, where he's not going to ever get any kind of real payout of them using that content. He'll probably end up getting buried because it'll never show up in any documentaries or anything. It'll just be lost to time under some shitty tab on a confusing app, as Punk would say. I immediately picture Punk trying to watch the WWE Network at that time. I wonder what. I mean, he goes on there to watch his Bret Hart matches, right? He loves him some Bret Hart. Do you think he pays for the WWE Network? No, he's probably got Xfinity, so he gets Peacock for free. Anyway. So Punk's happy that Ring of Honor has found a good, happy home with Tony Khan, and that not his entire legacy is lost to Vince McMahon and the WWE. His peak years are. No doubt the best years of his career were spent in the WWE system. The biggest achievements, the biggest moments, the biggest matches of his career were all there. But when you look at his overall body of work in the history of time, he's got his WWE work, which will stay in WWE, but he's got his Ring of Honor work, and now his body of work that he's building in AEW will forever stay with Tony Khan. And that's something that he's happy about, and that's something that made him break down into tears of joy, tears of happiness. So good for Punk, good for Tony Khan, good for Ring of Honor, good for all around. It's a good shakeup in the business, and it's good that Vince doesn't have just the monopoly of everything. And like I talked about last week, if Tony Khan's able to, over the next few years, 5 years, 10 years, acquire an Impact Wrestling and an NWA, he's going to have a catalog that rivals Vince, and it's going to be more modern and updated than Vince has. So it'll be fun to see. This is why I love wrestling. All right, I don't normally do this. I don't talk about anything on wrestling because every other podcast in the world does that. But breaking news as I record this, apparently Pete Dunne has been called up to the main roster. Finally. Fuck yeah, right? Right? You're excited? Pete Dunne on the main roster? Yeah? Debuted along with Sheamus under the name Butch. Yeah, I'm still here. No, I didn't. You didn't lose me. I'm going to say that one more time. Pete Dunne debuted on SmackDown tonight as I record this, along with Sheamus under the name Butch. He had like a weird little Sheamus hat on. Those little Irish dude hats. God. But like I had to double check. Well, are we living in Bizarro world right now? Like what? Really? Butch. Remember the conversation I had last week about Vince, where he sees a guy and he gets an idea of how he can use him as his shiny new toy and his fig fed? Well, Pete Dunne's been on the roster for a long ass time, kicking everybody's ass, right? European champion or fucking United Kingdom champion for years, undefeated, right? Or close to, anyway. The majority of the time it's been his belt. It's a championship. God damn it. So finally we're like, and he's fucking fantastic. Pete Dunne's one of the best wrestlers to watch wrestle. The shit he does in the ring, I love that. That's my favorite style of wrestling, is that European strong style, you know? Just the knuckle locks and the wrist manipulation and the finger breaking and the submissions and the transitions and the tweaking and the bending and just all that shit, man. Butch. Fucking Butch. We just talked about Bearcat Lee last week and how Vince fucking, the way he just and Pete Dunne's been on the roster so long, so it's like Vince just woke up one day and it's like, hey, what about a Butch? And fucking, he's just trying to make this little Irish fucking street gang thing going on or something like that. I don't know what the hell he's trying to pull. A little faction, like, oh, just Pete Dunne would be a perfect fucking fit for this European. They're all Europeans, right? Fucking the European fucking with their hats, and they're just fuck off. And Butch, you couldn't even keep the name Pete Dunne. He's got to be Butch. Butch. Jesus fucking Christ. This is why, and there's people that will justify this. There's people that are listening right now. They'll go, oh yeah, it's just whatever WWE does. It's fucking great. Butch. You goddamn serious? This is what, like, why would you change his name? And why to Butch? And why make him look like that? And why? That ain't that bad, people are saying. Why would you put Pete? He's Pete Dunne. He has been Pete Dunne. He did the same thing with Walter. Why are we doing that to these people? Are we trying to just own their names again? Is that just it? Your names, and we're just got a hard on for everybody's got to be a gimmick or something now? It's too much, man. It's too much. History is riddled with great rivalries like Tyson and Holyfield, Mario and Bowser, Harry Potter and Voldemort, Jason and Freddie, Biggie and Tupac, Joker and the Batman, and of course, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart. Check out this clip.
The Shawn Michaels fans were the fans of the casual wrestling fans that just wanted to see the dive and the flip and the like we've got today, that just want to see somebody go out there and do moves and shit. He was very ballet-like, right? And so for the casual fan and somebody who just watched wrestling see that was the Michaels. Bret Hart, those fans were into the art of and the sport of pro wrestling. And Bret was more consistently serious and believable and the things that they wanted. And that led to more guys wanting to be wrestlers.
That clip, of course, courtesy of Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru. You can listen each and every week. Man, when I was growing up, you were absolutely either a Bret guy or a Shawn guy. Very few people liked both because they were always at each other's necks, on screen and behind the scenes. And if you don't think the dirt sheets were around back in those days and people didn't know that the Heartbreak Kid and the Hitman didn't get along in real life, you got another thing coming. Because these guys have been beefing. But it wasn't just their beefs behind the scenes that made their rivalry so interesting. It was their on-screen rivalry. The way that their careers seemed to just parallel each other completely. You know, Bret Hart comes in with Jim the Anvil Neidhart as the Hart Foundation. Shawn Michaels comes in with Marty Jannetty as the Rockers. Both of them have a tag team run in the same era. The late 80s, early 90s. The teams feuded against each other. There was even an infamous match where the Hart Foundation dropped the tag team titles to the Rockers, who on record have never won the tag team titles. But there was a moment in history where the Hart Foundation dropped the straps, did the jizz brother, to the Rockers, but they didn't keep it because the ring ropes broke, and by the time they got around to being able to refilm the fucking thing, Vince got a hair up his ass and decided he didn't want to anymore. Then they both split up and go on a solo run right around the same time. Bret, of course, did not turn on Jim the Anvil Neidhart. He just sort of casually split off and went into the Intercontinental title territory. Shawn Michaels, of course, the greatest betrayal in the history of professional wrestling. The infamous barbershop window. If you don't think, if the barbershop window doesn't still just sit in your subconscious on a daily basis, right? Like, this was the biggest, holy shit, oh my God. I've never seen a heel turn like that in my lifetime of active watching wrestling. There have been some great heel turns in the history. And you could argue that there were bigger, grander, better ones like Hollywood Hogan and that sort of thing. Roman Reigns finally turning bad guy. But when the Heartbreak Kid held Marty Jannetty's hand up, we're together, I'm still with you, brother. And then he sort of directed him, hey, man, you got to go over here. He gives him that little hand. I wish he wouldn't have done that. It's the only flaw in that whole scene. Kind of gives him that little pat on the belly to kind of be like, hey, you back up a little bit so I can kick you. But when he nailed that super kick to Marty Jannetty's face, the world's fucking jaw dropped. Bobby Heenan, I knew it. And then Shawn takes him and he throws him through the barbershop window. Or if you want to take Bobby Heenan's side of the story, Marty Jannetty tried to run like a coward and jumped through the window all on his own. Either way, both of these men were now set on their singles path, wrestling in the Intercontinental Championship division. Michael's now the sexy boy, Bret still just the hitman. And they start feuding again over the Intercontinental title. They even had a ladder match before ladder matches were a thing, before WrestleMania 10. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels ladder match. It exists for the Intercontinental title. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels at the Survivor Series, right? Most infamous. Did you know that they also wrestled at the Survivor Series for the Intercontinental title years earlier? Yeah, you did. Of course you did. You wouldn't be listening to my show if you didn't know that. And again, just these two parallel characters. And sometimes Shawn's the champ. Other times Bret's the champ. But it seemed on these two solo paths that Shawn Michaels was the golden boy, right? Shawn was clearly the chosen one by Vince. But Bret was the guy earning it. Not that Shawn didn't hold his weight, wasn't any good, didn't earn his spot either. He did. He certainly did. But Bret was the guy that Vince kind of had to fall back on almost. Like, he wasn't the guy that Vince wanted. He was the guy that Vince needed. The guy that Vince could depend on. The guy that was there when the guy that Vince wanted didn't work out. Right? That happened first with Lex Luger. So then we switched to Bret. And then we tried Yokozuna. And then we switched to Bret. And then we tried Shawn. Or we tried Diesel. And then we switched back to Bret. Right? All of these. And that's getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves because as Shawn and Bret would continue to grow and continue to dominate and just outwork everybody, pure work ethic, right? Before it was a thing with Christian, who's out there every single night, outworking everybody, of course, right? You see him every single week, outworking everybody. That's his gimmick. Shawn and Bret were outworking everybody. And they earned their way up to the world title picture. And this was groundbreaking at the time because guys their size were never in the world title picture before. Roddy Piper, you could argue, is the smallest guy to ever sniff a world title in that era. Maybe Bob Backlund, he wasn't that big of a guy either, but now you're getting back into the 70s and very early 80s. And it was a big man business. Mach wasn't that big either. You get my point. Quit fucking trying to come up with examples. Okay, it was Andre and Hogan. That was it. Big guys. Anyway. So now you got a Shawn Michaels and a Bret Hart that have worked their way up. And I love both these stories too, because you just don't see it happen like this anymore. And because it happened so prominently with Shawn and it happened so prominently with Bret, we were almost trained and conditioned and shown that path as kids of working your way up the ladder, right? We watched it in real time. When I started watching wrestling, both these guys were in tag teams. And I watched them become singles, become intercontinental champions, and work their way up to the main event to both become WWF champion. And if you look back, Bret Hart had some of the greatest matches of that era. It was not a well-regarded era as far as like a boom time in the business. But Bret carried that shit on his back. Everybody he worked with had their best match with Bret. Kevin Nash, Yokozuna, all of them. Bammer worked Bret, I think, at that point. Bam Bam had some good matches, but Bret was just killing it with everybody. Owen, Jesus Christ, the matches he had with Owen. And then Shawn it was a little bit behind. He was still the Intercontinental guy for a little bit after Bret was in the world title picture. But Vince didn't want Bret in the world title picture. And he started getting this hard on for Shawn again after he had his hard on for Diesel, because he had a hard on for Diesel first, who was brought in by Shawn, so that had to be a kick in the balls. But Shawn worked his way up, and at WrestleMania 12, the boyhood dream has come true. And his run was not anything to write home about. Neither was Bret's as far as like a money drawing star power boom period or anything like that. But Bret was out there having kick-ass quality matches. Shawn had some pretty damn good matches. He had one of Mick Foley's best matches at the time. He was having good matches with Nash and that kind of shit, but Bret was just a little bit better than Shawn, right? And because the two cannot coexist at the same time, they were inevitably forced back together. Their match at WrestleMania 12, they were supposed to rematch at WrestleMania 13, but Shawn just, whatever, had a little boo-boo or didn't want to or whatever the fuck the problem was at the time. And then you get into the Attitude Era, where you got DX and you got the reformation of the Hart Foundation, and they're just Canada all the way. And just more great rivalries, right? The mic work, the sunny days, the lost your smile, all that shit. These are two parallel careers. And sadly, they split ways at the Survivor Series and had that awesome match up until the screw job. And then, obviously, the screw job's been covered to death. Bret leaves the company. And that was it until Bret finally came back and they had that handshake on Monday Night Raw. And they hugged it out. Bret still talks shit about Shawn. So I don't think he fully made up with Shawn or anything like that. But these guys, the parallel careers that these two had, the rivalry that they've had throughout that parallel career, from tag teams to Intercontinental, it is most likely the greatest rivalry in professional wrestling for that reason, because it was in all phases of their career, in all divisions, at all levels. You could argue like a Stone Cold versus The Rock was the greatest feud because they had a couple WrestleMania matches or whatever. You might not be wrong. You could argue any other number of feuds, but this one will go down as one of the most legendary feuds in the history of professional wrestling. And if I had to pick, if you just gun to my head, are you a Bret guy or are you a Shawn guy? When I was a kid, I grew up a Shawn guy. I liked Bret too. I liked them both as a kid. I liked Shawn's character and some of the flashier stuff he was doing. I can't say I was huge on the high flying stuff, but I'm sure it had an effect on me appreciating Shawn. But I mean, even as soon as he turned on Marty, I was a fan of Shawn. You know, when he was the sexy boy with Sherry, I was a fan of him. I always liked the bad guys as a kid. Even when Mach was a bad guy, bad guys were always cool to me. I don't know. I guess that tells you all you need to know about me. But I was always a fan of Bret Hart's work. When in my brain, when I think to pro wrestling perfection, like in-ring crispness, it's Bret, the fucking Hitman Hart, the excellence of execution, truly. So, I mean, gun to my head, I'm a Bret Hart guy. I would rather sit and watch Bret Hart matches all day long than Shawn Michaels matches. And that's saying something because Shawn Michaels is widely considered as the greatest of all time. So, that's just my 2 cents. You're Jim Cornette's on his podcast. We're going to wrap this up for now. And who knows what the next chapter in the greatest rivalry of professional wrestling might be. Eric Bischoff gave his 2 cents this week on Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor. Bet he wishes he got to buy out a company when he was running WCW, huh? Check out this clip.
But before we do that, I want to talk about what's going on in wrestling this week because, boy, there was some big news this week. It's been speculated for a few weeks, but this Wednesday he made it official. Tony Khan purchased Ring of Honor. And I don't know that you or I saw that. I know that we both knew folks who were thinking, hey, what's the value of this thing and what could be possible with this thing? But really and truly, if anybody was going to get it, it only made sense for Tony Khan, did it not?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. You know, I mean, you could argue that because of the power of Peacock and that platform, that any additional wrestling content might be a good strategic move for them. For Tony, I think it was a good deal. If Tony's goal ultimately is to build, independent of Turner, his own streaming platform, absolutely the acquisition of Ring of Honor makes sense. It's not going to make financial sense in the short term. It's just not. How many people around in the United States, the United States television viewing audience, how many of them even know what Ring of Honor is?
Well, listen, though, here's the thing.
No. Let me finish, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's just echoing exactly what I said last week, that the value in Ring of Honor is the streaming content. Yes, and it does sound like, just following up from last week's segment on Tony Khan buying Ring of Honor, that it does appear that the idea is to keep the brand alive. The details on that haven't yet been released as far as will it still be on Sinclair, who's going to be on the show, who's going to be booking the show, when is it going to be on, all of that shit, how's it going to be taped, none of that's been released. But we do know that he does plan on keeping it alive in some capacity. I think I still stand by exactly how I laid it out last week. That's exactly how you do it. You can go back and check out my segment. I also got the clip out if you just want to check out the clip on YouTube. But that's the value of Ring of Honor, is the streaming value of it. And over the years, I mean, even sitting today, and certainly in the future, streaming content is where the money's at. Tony Khan knows this. He's a smart motherfucker, or he has smart people around him, or both. Scooping up that content right now, even if he's gonna go broke, and I believe it was acquired by a company owned wholly by Tony Khan, so it's not daddy's money or anything like that. Those, maybe it's money that he was gifted by his dad. Who knows? I think he had said that it's his trust fund, essentially. Like if his dad passes away, money that Tony's gonna get, and that will. This is just a little advance on that, is what he got to buy AEW. But apparently the company, he owns it outright. He has no partners or anything. That's it. So maybe that's not on AEW's books necessarily. But between Ring of Honor and the video game, they're putting a lot into this video game, by the way. This isn't just going to be let's slap a video game out there. There's too many gamers in AEW. Both behind like Aubrey Edwards, if you guys don't know, like her career was in developing video games before she got to AEW. Before she got into refereeing, she was working with video games, producing video games, developing video games. So there's too many people that know a good game behind this project. Kenny Omega is a big part of it, that are that are just not going to let this game fail or be anything half-assed. You know, this is going to be the best it can be. This is going to, and you know, there'll be some bugs and it'll get better in time, but they're going to get a good product on the table. And all of this, like Tony Khan's already said that AEW was in the red last year or this year or whatever. Well, not this year, but as of 2021, because of the video game. But only because of the video game. Like, you know, had they not been producing the video game, he would have been in the black. So the company's, he's not running the company at a deficit. And I know we all see all these new hires and everything all the time, and we're like, my God, you're going to go broke. You're blowing all your money and shit. But I believe it's also been said that he does have a salary cap and he does stick to it hard. And Tony being a numbers nerd and the guy that really wanted the general manager mode and all that stuff, I know he knows that kind of shit. So he's getting big time TV money and pay-per-view money and house money and merch money and licensing money, and AEW's doing okay. So they got the money to spend. You can be greedy and saving it all, you know, and like stockpiling it or investing it and God knows what, who knows. They got everything they need already. They're investing in talent, and now they just invested in Ring of Honor, and they're investing in a video game. So, but that, you know, just to kind of bring it all back together, because, you know, I talked a lot about this last week. The value's in the streaming, and that's going to make or break it. I don't recommend they try to run independent shows as Ring of Honor. It's a waste of time. Tie them to your shows or don't do any shows. Or you could move those to your warehouse in Orlando. Not your warehouse, but that studio that, you know, that they did TNA at and everything like that. You could do that there. You do Ring of Honor there every week and then move your darks to your tour, to your live events. Or, you know, put Ring of Honor on your live events. Either way, however you want to do it. Trying to do what you're doing now and then add Ring of Honor shows at separate locations in the country and separate budgets and all that. Probably not the best move, but we'll see. You know, I don't think Tony would have jumped into this without wholeheartedly knowing what he was going to do with it. And as CM Punk had said earlier in the previous clip, we know that it's in good hands with Tony Khan. He's going to be a good curator of that content. We have more breaking news here. This time a little bit more sad. Like I said, I don't often try to cover the wrestling in-ring stuff, but apparently on tonight's SmackDown, as I record this, Big E has suffered a broken neck. Or what appears to be a broken neck. Not good. I hate to see that with anybody in wrestling. You know, it's not ballet, they say. You know, it's a physical. But when you got like younger, greener guys that don't fully have their wheels under them yet, and they're going to just pick a guy up and throw him over the top of their head, they better know what the fuck they're doing. I'm not trying to blame anybody either. Accidents happen, but and this could just be an overreaction to just a shitty incident, you know? But my God, man, I really hope Big E's okay. I hope that, I mean, he is said on the Twitter that he's okay. He can move all of his limbs and everything like that, his fingers. So he's not like paralyzed or anything like that. But I mean, this could be career threatening. So thoughts and prayers for Big E and a speedy, safe, healthy recovery. Mvp was on the Wrestling with Freddie podcast this week. Get it? Mvp. 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 I heard it somewhere else and I thought it was funny, so I'm trying here, okay? I'm trying. MVP was on the Wrestling with Freddie podcast this week. If you haven't yet listened to the Wrestling with Freddie podcast, I highly recommend. Throw it in your rotation. It's good shit. He's a good host. And I always get excited when I see MVP pop up somewhere. I love listening to MVP talk about the business, talk about life. He just seems like the kind of guy that I would want to hang out with, right? He's super charming. And apparently him and Freddie are really good friends. You know, they were talking about that. Talked about all sorts of things, you know, random friend stuff, jiu-jitsu they got into for a long time, a little bit of wrestling, Bobby Lashley, that kind of stuff. But what interested me most about this interview was they were talking about when they first met and the initial reaction MVP had when he was backstage and he was told that this Hollywood writer guy is going to start telling you how to do your scripts, how to do your promos. Check out this clip.
So at the time, you know, I'm still protecting the business from, you know, from the Hollywood outsiders.
Jerks like me.
Yeah, the guy was on the cover of Teen Beat, but he's going to tell me how to cut a promo. Get out of here. But you know, you obviously were very good at what you do, and you know, you contributed well, and you're a genuinely good person. And I had to eat a whole lot of crow.
Nah, it wasn't any crow. I understood it. And I told you this when we first met. Like, we kind of both bonded because we have old school mentalities, and we believe in earning respect, but giving dignity, right? Like, everyone deserves dignity, but everyone should have to earn your respect. And respect should be earned on a case-by-case basis. I can't just walk in the room and say, well, my movie did burr, 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 so you should listen to me, because you tell me to go screw myself, right? So I have to kind of...
I don't care about your movie. Have you ever been chokeslammed by The Undertaker?
No. Nor would I have been.
Yeah, it was a weird transition period in the WWE at that time. When they went corporate, they went through some awkward growing pains, right? We see this clean, polished, professional, well-oiled machine now, you know, where everything's super corporate and they got their charities and they got their you know, their front-facing good image and then their behind-the-scenes firing everybody image. But before they switched to becoming a public company, it was the Wild West, even up until they went public. You know, with JBL bullying people backstage and Chris Benoit bullying people backstage and just the ribbing and the jocular locker room wrestling culture. Like, they don't appreciate outsiders. Now it's completely different. Now they are a Hollywood product. So now they're just friendly to everybody that's backstage. Everybody can fucking throw their opinion in, and it's all just good shit. But at the time, wrestling was still transitioning out of the old school mentality, the kayfabe, the who the fuck are you to tell me how to do my job shit. And a guy like Freddie Prinze Jr., if you don't know him, and some of you listening even who might not be familiar with him or heard any of his interviews or his podcasts or anything, might be like, yeah, just some douchebag Hollywood writer. I think Freddie is immensely talented. I think he's very smart to the business as well. He gets it. He understands it. He understands what he's trying to accomplish, what wrestlers are trying to accomplish when they cut their promos. He was a great asset to the WWE. He really was. And he still, to this day, loves wrestling. He said that his bucket list thing that he wants to do is start his own promotion. You know, like when he retires, it's going to be to just run a Fed somewhere. Just what we need, right? Another fucking Fed. We got the Create Your Narrative coming out. You got all, and you know what? I love wrestling, right? You know, the variety is the spice of life. The more the merrier, the more places the guys get to work. But Freddie's a great asset. He's smart to the business, and he was a good value to the WWE. And him and MVP hit it off quick after their little incident there, where MVP was like, dude, who the fuck are you trying to tell me how to cut my promo? Just because you're Mr. fucking Hollywood, you come in here, think you know it all? And Freddie was aware of that too, and he knew he had to earn his place there and earn his respect there, and that he was in a different industry. And you know what? I like that to a certain extent. I think that's cool when people can obtain a certain level of success in one industry, a certain level of fame in a certain industry, and then they come into wrestling and they have to earn it. They're not just giving it because they've obtained that level of fame or success. They might get the opportunity because of that, but now you got to earn it. And a Freddie Prinze Jr. who was on the cover of magazines and big Hollywood movies, the teeny movies, you know, the horror movies and the Scooby-Doos and the She's All That's and all that stuff. Kicking the hacky sack around, right? She's All That. You've seen that before, right? But he comes into the WWE and everybody knows who he is and nobody gives a fuck who he is. Listen here, Hollywood boy. You don't tell me a goddamn thing. Shut your mouth. Open your ears. Learn a thing or two. But he contributed a lot of great shit. And the fact that he still loves the business, the fact that he's had 2 runs in the WWE, and the fact that he still wants to go get involved, it's beautiful. I love listening to Freddie talk about wrestling. You can hear the nerd, you can hear the love of wrestling just dripping out of him. And like I said, I love listening to anything with MVP. He's entertaining as fuck. He's a good storyteller. He's just a cool guy, a guy you want to hang out with. Smoke a doob with, right? He talks about that. You know, he partakes in the medical benefits of cannabis, I think is the way that he put it. But yeah, anyway, go check out that interview and maybe if MVP is not your thing, go find a different episode. There's all kinds of great shit, whether it's an interview with somebody that he worked with in wrestling, or if it's just him telling stories about Vince or working behind the scenes, well worth a listen. The always lovely, always amazing Lita made an appearance on After the Bell this week with Corey Graves and Vic Joseph, talking about her return to the WWE, Saudi Arabia, that sort of thing. And in this clip right here, she was talking about if she sees herself having a future in the WWE, if she sees that she may want to come back or not. Check out this clip.
Until it's still in your heart. You can't take it out of your heart. What is the likelihood that, let's say, by the end of the year, we see Lita in a WWE ring again?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I am just honestly like taking this all as it comes. And I feel really like I'd be stoked, I think, to do something else. Whereas prior, I'd be like, no. Like, you know, and now I'm questioning, like, were you being honest with yourself, or was that just how you felt then and this is how you feel now? Because I'm all about changing your opinion. Like, don't back yourself into a corner just because you said I'm done or I'm not done. Even being in the Rumble, and there are women that I touched in there just so briefly, but I was like, oh, they're really strong, or like they're really good, or like seeing them from inside the ring work versus from television, and just seeing how deep and talented the roster is like, wow, there's just so many possibilities.
I think the time is right for Alita to come back and have a few dream matches. Like she said, she's not itching to just jump in full bore, let's go, and just wrestle anybody. You know, she's not looking for a full return run, but she's very open to select dream match feuds that would do good business and would be sort of that clash of eras, you know, the dream match. You know, you never thought you'd see somebody from this era face somebody from that era. And, you know, there's a few matches. Obviously, the one with her and Becky was a dream match. You know, I'd love to see her mix it up with Rhea Ripley. Love to see her mix it up with Asuka, if she ever comes back or if that's ever a thing again. Love to see her mix it up with Charlotte. Like, there's lots of great talent that she could get in the ring with and just fucking have some bomb return matches. You know, she doesn't need to come back and have a full run, but if she's back, if she wants to come back and do a few select matches like that, I'm all for it. It's great. I think, you know, Lita comes from an era, she's from the bra and panties era, her and Trish. But yet, when you think back on that era, Lita and Trish are like the legends of the women's division, right? They're like the biggest. And they're the biggest because they were able to transcend the bra and panties. Both of them were bra and panties. They were there for eye candy and sex appeal. But both of them worked so hard and often with each other even to bring themselves out of it. You guys forget, maybe you don't, some of you might, that Lita and Trish main evented a Monday Night Raw in the bra and panties era. Maybe it was just a little after the bra and panties era. We were making that transition out of, it was sort of in that window between the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression era. But Trish and Lita are groundbreaking, trailblazing, trend-setting. Man, the things that they were able to accomplish for women in professional wrestling, I think should be remembered by history is nothing short of incredible. They changed the game for women's wrestling. Before, and there were great women's wrestlers before them, don't get me wrong. Many of them, all the way back to, you know, the 70s and whatever, you know, like Moolah, I'm sure. You know, I can't say I've ever actually honestly sat and watched any of Moolah's older matches or anything, but I know Sherry Martel was a good in-ring worker. I know Luna Vachon was a decent in-ring worker. I know we had it with Medusa, obviously, was a good worker. So there were a few back in the day that were great women's wrestlers and were groundbreaking for that era. But when we transition into this bra and panty sex appeal attitude era, fucking, it's just all about tits and ass. All of those women were pretty much pigeonholed into that shit. Pigeons. Velvet Sky. So it took a Lita and a Trish to scratch and claw and fight. And like Lita said in this interview, I felt like I had to make deals with people, you know. I will give you a bra and panties match if you let me crash through a table in this other match. Like, she had to fight for those opportunities. They had to go through the degradation and the humiliation and the just sexification, sexualization of themselves, right? They were just objects for the longest time, but they fought, they scratched, they tried their best, and they were able to make names for themselves as women's wrestlers in an era where nobody else did that. Maybe a Molly Holly, maybe a Miss Jacqueline, you know, maybe Ivory to a certain extent. You know, these are some women that were also good workers. But you got your Trish and your Litas. They're the legends. They're the Hall of Famers. They're the main. They are the two names of women's wrestling coming out of that era. And for them to come back and work with the ladies of today when wrestling is now accepted, women's wrestling is more accepted for them. For her to go to Saudi Arabia and do that whole fucking thing, which I could go off on a whole nother rant on that. You know, there's clearly two ways to look at that. Either, you know, you're being part of being progressive and bringing that country to a modern day, or you are being part of the holding back of women. You know, you could say, oh, you're not gonna make me wear a fucking bodysuit, fuck you. Or you could say, hey, it's groundbreaking that I'm even able to do this, so let's be a part of this. There's two ways to look at it, but clearly Lita had a good time. Clearly Lita wants to do more, and I hope she does, and I'm excited to see it. Braun Breaker was on Barstool's Wrestling Podcast with Brandon Walker. first full-length interview I think I've seen with him. First any kind of interview I think I've seen with him really outside. I think I've seen a few comments from him here and there, but this is the first like sit down and have an interview with a guy like a Brandon Walker type thing I've seen Braun do. And oof, fucking rough. Check out this clip.
Your career has really started off very, very fast. I mean, it was only maybe a year and a month that you signed with WWE, and you've been the face of NXT 2.0. How's that rise been for you? Like, it hasn't. You see some people come in, they get developed over a period of years. For you, it's been very, very, very quick. Has that felt right to you?
It's just been. I don't know, man. It's been a cool experience. I think it's just a testament to, our great coaching staff here at the WWE Performance Center, and the amount of just resources that are at our disposal here that we can use to get better, ways to improve. And, we have everything here that we need to be successful. And it's just, there's just so much you could take away from WWE Performance Center. Man, we got coaches who've been around for, 20, 30, some 40 years that, of just knowledge in the business. It's unbelievable, man.
And that was the highlight. That was the highlight of the podcast. This man has the charisma, the charm of a fucking wet paper bag. Now, don't get me wrong. I love me some Braun Breaker. I do. I really do. I love that he's a Steiner. I love that he looks like a Steiner. I love that he works like a Steiner. I love his meteoric rise, even though it's synonymous with the death of the black and gold brand of NXT. But I have appreciation for Braun Breaker. I like him, and I really do think he is a future, if not the future star of the WWE. And within the next 3 to 5 years, he will be the main event of WrestleMania, probably against Roman Reigns. You could probably mark that down. Roman Reigns versus Braun Breaker, WrestleMania fucking 41. Maybe even 40. This is 38, so next year's 39. WrestleMania 40, Braun Breaker versus Roman Reigns, main event, World Championship. Calling it here now. Calling my shot. But the dude, he, you know what? He's new. He's a fucking football player. He's not the Miz. He's not an actor. He's not a fucking showman. He's an athlete. He's a jock. This is going to be one of those problems that these fucking WWE new policies that they have where they're not taking any indie guys, and it's all about former pro football players and college football players and just any kind of athlete. You got to be an athlete. Fuck indie wrestlers. If you played sports somewhere and you never even really heard of wrestling, we can mold you. We can shape you. You just got to look the part and be able to physically perform the part. We'll do the rest. They're going to run into these issues. And granted, Braun's not just that guy because his dad is fucking Rick Steiner. So I know it's not quite just jock boy off the street. But he's got the charisma of a fucking brick wall. You gotta admit. Go watch that interview. That was the highlight. I'm telling you, that was the most exciting that it got. Was that right there. There was a lot of... He didn't know how to answer any questions. He didn't know how to talk to an interviewer. Like, when an interview asks you... Dude, make an interviewer's life easy. Just talk. Don't talk so much that you hijack their show. But when they ask you a question, give them some fucking content. Give them something to work with. Because the less that you say, and the more dead air time, or the more dull air time, and the more boring that your bullshit is, the more that the host has to pull out of their ass to try to fill time, or steer things back on track, or fucking pump some life back into the show. You're killing the show. And bless Brandon Walker's heart. He always has great interviews. Sometimes they're train wrecks, but they're train wrecks on purpose. That's like kind of his shtick. You know, he's just a schlub of a guy that he's just has the worst interviews, but he has the best interviews. Not the best, but you get what I'm saying, right? He's very good at his job. And, you know, he'll ask really awkward questions just to kind of make the room feel weird. And, you know, he does a lot of shit like that, you know, or he's fun like that. But he got some laughs out of Braun. So Braun has some humor somewhere in him, I guess. You know, he has the ability to laugh, but a lot of his questions, he just didn't know how to answer them. And he's just, yeah, I trained really hard for this, and Dolph Ziggler, he's gonna get the best of Braun Breaker next time, and I'm gonna train really hard. I'm gonna be at my peak performance, in my top physical condition. I'm gonna be bigger and stronger. Like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe even some of you, it's rough. It was rough. I'm telling you, it's rough. Go watch it. It's horrible. And Brandon Walker should be commended because he tried his ass off to keep that fucking thing afloat. But Braun, yeah, he's got some work to do on the charisma end, but that'll come in time. I hope, anyway. Like, I'll say this: Scott Steiner wasn't the most charismatic guy in the early Steiner brother days. You know what I mean? Like, he was all right. But, you know, the Steiner brothers weren't, like, fantastic promos. But I'll tell you, Big Papa Pump was one of the best of that era, for sure. So, time will tell, I suppose. We'll see. We'll see what it is. But he's got some work to do. Thank you guys so much for checking out the show, hanging out with me all the way to the end. You guys are my absolute favorites. Let me just let you in on a little secret, okay? Those other guys, the ones that listen to like a couple minutes, half the show maybe, fuck those guys. They don't listen to the end. Fuck those guys right in the fucking ass. I'm just kidding. I love everybody that listens to the show. I appreciate every single listener, from the 1 minute, ew, fuck that guy, all the way to you guys hanging out with me here to the end. I appreciate you. I love your support. Speaking of support, please throw me a like or a follow or whatever it is on whatever page you're on. Subscribe, any of that shit. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. It's at Seth Grimes Media. Trying to grow on all of those platforms. Trying to spread my wings, if you will. Trying to get out there a little bit. You can follow me on YouTube or subscribe or whatever it is. / United Underworld Media. I got a book for sale, The Gathering, A Bold Journey into the Belly of the Juggalo Underworld. You could read that when you buy it from Amazon, or you download it on your Kindle tablet, or you could just listen to it in your earbuds if you subscribe to Audible. It's on there too. I recommend the Audible. The narrator's fucking dope. We got wrestling NFTs. That's right, bitches. We got pro wrestling themed NFTs. That's CryptomaniaNFT.com. You can also find it on OpenSea.io. Just search for Cryptomania NFT and look for the logo that looks like Hulk Hogan's Hulkamania logo, as we are running wild in the NFT space, brother. That's all I got for you today. That's all the plugs, all that other shit. I'm sure there's other stuff I'm forgetting. I don't know. There's another podcast feed, Seth Grimes Media. Just search it. Same place you're listening to this. It's a different feeds. You guys don't gotta listen to that kind of shit. But I got did a full spoiler review of the Batman movie. So I got shit like that over there, as well as just another podcast, which is just kind of my audio journal. All kinds of fun stuff over there. Go check that out if you want more. If you don't, then fuck off. And I will see you guys next week right here on the Pro Wrestling Podcast. Yeah, it was better than last week. That was a good one this time.